we'll get started here. I'll call this October 29th, 2014 committee meeting of the Tennessee Fish and Wildlife Commission meeting to order. My name is Jeff Griggs and I am chairman of the commission. This time I'd like to ask everybody, if you have a cell phone, please put it on mute or vibrate. And if you do get a call, I would ask that you leave the room and go to the hall before you take that call. Also, there's a tablet that will be passed around the room. I'd ask that you would sign that tablet where we will have a record of your attendance today. If you're here representing a group, I would ask that you would put the name of that group out beside your name. At this time, Ms. Hayes, would you please call the roll?
Chad Baker.
Here.
Jim Bledsoe.
Here.
Harold Cannon.
Here.
Bill Cox.
Here.
Jeff Griggs.
Here.
Connie King.
Here.
Jeff McMillan.
Here.
Tom Rice.
Here.
Jim Ripley.
Here.
James Stroud.
Here.
Trey Teague. David Watson.
Here.
Jamie Woodson. We have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Ms. Hayes. At this time, is there any announcements need to be made by the agency or commission? Okay, all right, if not. Today is committee day, and votes taken today in committee are non-binding and will be merely recommendations that will go to the full commission tomorrow. Anyone that wants to address the commission today may do so. I would ask that you wait till the particular subject matter comes up that you'd like to speak about. I'd also ask that you would wait till the presentation is over. Please raise your hand to be recognized, and if you are recognized, come to the front microphone, state your name, and if you're here representing a group, I would ask that you would also mention that group and probably the purpose for being here today. Also, if you do come to the mic, I would respectfully ask that if you have a question, direct that question to the chairman of that committee. At no time have a conversation with anyone in the room by turning around or with agency personnel. Direct your questions to the chairman. And once the chairman recognizes you as the conversation goes, it's then fine to carry on. I, along with the chairman of each committee, reserve the right to limit comments and discussion, especially in cases of repetition. If you're here today and if you looked at the agenda, and I think Ms. Hayes has put an agenda in each chair, if you're here and the subject matter that you have is not on that agenda, please wait till the end of the meeting and I will ask, is there any other business? And at that time, raise your hand and I will recognize you and you can come to the mic. At this time, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Vice Chairman of the Wildlife Management Committee, Mr. Bill Cox.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Wildlife Chief Radajak has got some reports.
Thank you, Commissioner Cox. It gives me great pleasure today to introduce a couple of individual speakers about some topics that we don't normally discuss, but this is one of those feel-good meetings where you get to brag about some of the work that our agency does, as well as our partner agencies. The first person I'd like to invite up here is going to be a representative from the Appalachian Bear Rescue. To give you an idea of how important they are to us, bears are one of those high-profile species that everybody loves, not just hunters and fishermen, but also the general public. They're extremely well-liked. 90% of all Tennessee residents want bears around in their county. And the service that the ABR provides to us is absolutely you can't measure it, because what they do is they deal with orphan bear cubs, and they save us a lot of public relations headaches whenever we have orphan cubs. We have a place right here in Tennessee that we're able to send these cubs so they could be cared for and released back into the wild. But before I introduce the representative, for those of you that don't know, what brought me to Tennessee back in 1997 is I was the first manager of that facility. Back then it was called the Appalachian Bear Center. And I could stand up here and tell you stories upon stories, but I'll just tell you one. Actually, when I first came down is June of 1997, and I drove down by myself from Buffalo, New York, and no one was there to greet me. There's a single wide trailer on the premise that I had to live at that bear center, and there was a key that they left under the mat for me. And so I went in there, and the only two things that were in that single wide trailer was a shotgun and a case of pepper spray. And I called Tom Faulkner, who was one of the board members, and I said, do I really need this stuff? And he's like, well, that's not for the bears, that's for the locals around there. So anyway, another quick story. Early on, they struggled. It was very tough going back in the late 90s, trying to raise money, having no money whatsoever. And I remember one particular story. Kim Delosier, who is the head biologist at Great Smoky Mountain National Park, he was one of my mentors, along with Doug Scott from TWRA. Kim called me up one early morning one time and told me that there was a cub that came from Chimney's picnic area that had a severely broken back leg, and he was wondering if we could take it. And at that point in time, we had about $700 in our in the treasurer's report, and I had confirmed my salary got paid out of that. And so when Kim called me up and said, "Can you take this bear?" I said, "How much is it going to cost?" And he said, "It'll probably be about $500 to $1,000." I said, "Kim, we don't have that kind of money." And he said, "Well, let me make a few calls." So to his credit, Kim Delosier made some calls, and he found a donor. Still to this day, don't know who it was, but they paid for that surgery. They sent that cub to the University of Tennessee. It had a plate put on its back leg to repair that leg, but its whole back end was shaved for that surgery. And when he brought the bear to me, he gave me one instruction. He said, whatever you do, make sure the bear does not move around or stays confined for at least 2 weeks for that leg to start mending, and then you can put him in the big enclosure. I said, good deal, I got it. So I put that cage with the cub into the maintenance building, and I had to figure out a way to feed it. So I ran to the store, I bought a dog food bowl, and I came back, and the cub was still asleep from the anesthesia laying in the back of the cage. I figured I'll just open the door quickly and slide the bowl in. And I opened that door, and that cub came alive and came right at me, scared the daylights out of me, and I fell backwards. He crawled out over me, and I left the door open on the maintenance building. And so the cub went out the building, and I'm like, oh my God, I just lost the bear. So I went chasing the bear, and I go out the building, and I see the bear over here and my dog over here, and I think, if I can get the bear to tree, I could tie my dog to the tree until I could get help, because I was the only one there. And at that point in time, my dog read my mind, because its eyes widened, and it took off that way, and the bear took off that way. So I had tears streaming down my face, and I called Kim back, and I'm like, Kim, I lost your bear. And he just laughed and said, don't worry, we'll just call it a spontaneous release. Anyway, no lie. I set traps for weeks on end trying to catch that bear. I felt so bad for that bear. And he called me back, I think it was about 6 weeks later. He goes, would you happen to recognize a bear with a shaved back end in Chimney's picnic area? I said, no way. It had traveled over 22 air miles to get back to its home range. We ended up doing a research poster that was presented at the Eastern Black Bear Workshop on that bear alone, so I did know what I was doing. So anyway, with that in mind, what I'd like to do is invite Dana Dodd, who is the president of the Bear Center, to come up and say a few words and tell you about what they do at the ABR.
Thank you, Daryl. And I haven't chased any bears or lost any bears yet. So I work for IBM full-time, so using this Dell PC, that might be a little hard, but we'll see what we can do here. So Appalachian Bear Rescue is really here in Townsend, Tennessee. We are a nonprofit. We take care of injured and orphaned cubs, and what we say to people is we give bears a second chance at life in the wild. We are a one-of-a-kind facility, obviously, here in Tennessee, and we are a nonprofit. We get donations, large and small, from everybody around, and we actually get donations from people. Now that we have social media, we get donations from people from 8 or 10 countries as well. And that money does come into Tennessee and is spent in Tennessee with taxpayers in Tennessee. Our mission statement is that we take care of all black bears and the health and well-being, but we particularly at our facility take care of injured and orphaned black bear cubs. We also educate people about living safely and with the bears here in Tennessee. And we have begun doing research on bears, and I'll talk about that just a little bit more to help the population in general. Our facility in the last just few months has grown from 25 acres to 65 acres. And we're on 65 acres of Blount County land. And the Blount County Commission has been very generous to work with us and give us a long-term lease on the property. And over I guess starting last February or so, we broke ground on doubling the space of our wild enclosures. That's the space where the largest bears that we care for are located. And you can see the two squares. We have two roughly equal-sized large pens, and those have trees, water sources, dens, etc. And so the bears learn to be bears. And once they're in those enclosures, they don't really see people anymore. That's the key to the success of all of it, is that we have to severely limit any people contact that these bears have so that they can successfully be released back to the wild. We're not a sanctuary. We don't keep bears. We don't have bears that are ever over 2 years of age. On occasion, we do take bears as a favor to agencies, whether it be this state or others, when we've had bears from, I think, 8 states in the national park. On occasion, we do take a bear at maybe part of a court case or something. That bear that doesn't come to us with a hope of being released, but the state is trying to find a place to put the bear later. Some of the large projects in the last 3 years, we've really grown the facility a great deal, but we added a Cub Nursery. That's the place where the smallest bears come. At first, we do have to either bottle feed them or syringe feed them, and as quickly as possible, we have them weaned from that far sooner than they would be weaned from their mother. And they are moved outside and further away from humans. And our wild enclosure expansion, these are the kinds of things that we do once we have the pens in place. But you can see the den there. Those are just black plastic culverts, and we try to make them as natural looking as possible with logs and different branches and stuff that we have all over the property. And that was from our inspection this summer when TWRA came and looked at the new enclosures, made a few suggestions, and Tom Faulkner's not here today. He's our vice president because he is helping pour concrete to finish up these wild enclosures so that they're ready for 2015 bears. In addition to the big facility changes, we now have 3 curators. For many years, and Daryl knows you're kind of on your own, and for many years you had 1, and now we have 1 lead curator and 2 part-time assistant curators so that we can cover 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week shift when we have bears on site. We also, I told you, just went from 25 to 65 acres. We've added cold and dry storage facilities. We've added a Cub laundry. Yes, for many years, the Cub laundry came right into the office and got washed in the same washing machine that maybe your towels were in. Not such a good idea, but we have a whole facility for that now. We're putting the entire facility on generator power backup because those of you who have wells know that when you don't have power, you don't have water. And when you have animals and you don't have water, that's not a very smart place to be in, so we're not going to be there anymore. And we won a Toyota Tundra, brand new from Toyota's 100 Cars for Good. So I guess that's the company vehicle now. And if you are on Facebook at all, please like us on Facebook. We have 62,000 fans, and we work very hard. We do have some fun that the people like seeing furry little cubs, but we work very hard to use that as an education tool so that people can learn about the bears and learn that they're not just furry little animals that are fun to look at, that they're very dangerous animals if you don't give them the respect they deserve, and that they deserve all of our respect and to stay away from them. Just recently, we're a closed facility. We don't accept guests. We're not allowed to have guests by your rules. And we would never do it anyway, because then the bears would become habituated to people. So I get calls all the time. Can I come over? Can I come see the facility? And the answer is always no. And we were fortunate enough to be able to purchase a building in Trillium Cove in Townsend, and we'll use this building as an education and visitor center. We've already had a few classes there, and will officially be open no later than March the 1st. It'll probably be sometime before that. But honestly, in Townsend, after Thanksgiving, the sidewalks sort of roll up and we don't really have a lot of people there. And then a big announcement, we think, it's very important to all of us because we haven't done a lot of research since the days that Daryl was there and working with Dr. Pelton's students at UT. But our curator is Coy Blair. He's sitting over there on the front row. Coy has his degree from Maryville College in biology. And we just enrolled Coy in graduate school at the University of Tennessee to get his master's degree in wildlife and fisheries. And we're not 100% sure exactly what his research will be, but it will have a lot to do with bears and hopefully a lot to do with ABR bears and the bears on our premises. We want to work really hard to have a closer relationship with the scientific community, even though we straddle the world between the maybe fluffy community and the science community. We're in it to give these bears a second chance. And the only way to do that is to understand the science of it and to spend all of your resources and energy making sure you do everything you can to limit human contact and get them back to the wild and get them out of ABR as fast as we humanly can get them out. So any questions? That was easy. Thank you very much.
With that in mind, we caught word that they were purchasing the office space in Townsend, and they just celebrated a very unique anniversary. They just took in this year their 200th bear. When I was there, I took in number 2 through like 50, but they just hit their 200th bear. And so with that, we'd like to present a little award to you that you can put on display at your new office in Townsend.
To do that. This is our first bear. You can tell photography wasn't what it is now. And that's 0 in 1996. Photography's a little better.
Sir, move
Can-
that one.
They can't see. These are more current releases that we had and a lot better photography than was available in 1996.
Here's an award we have. It says, presented to the Appalachian Bear Rescue from the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency in recognition of receiving and rehabilitating their 200th bear and for their tireless efforts in black bear education. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Get a picture of you.
Absolutely.
Daryl, can I make a quick comment? One of the first places I got to be a part of an inspection on was ABR when I first came on this commission, going on 3 years. What you all have accomplished in 3 years is absolutely remarkable. And the applause you hear, you deserve so much more, but just well done. And I really appreciate the relationship you have with our staff. Just the locking of arms. So you all do a phenomenal job, and I want you to know that's greatly appreciated and greatly noticed.
To add one more comment about bears before we move on, to let you know how important this topic is, bears have recently been in the news quite often, unfortunately in bad situations. There was recently 2 serious attacks down in Florida. There's a fatality in New Jersey, another one in Wyoming. And this bear education effort is high on everyone's mind. And a couple of years ago, Dan Gibbs, our regional biologist, came and presented an idea about creating this unified bear education drive that, as of last week, it is now being elevated. I spoke in front of the directors at the Southeastern Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies last week in Florida to elevate this bear education drive to a national conservation need. And they're all in favor of it. They believe that all the other directors will be in favor of it. And when it gets elevated to that NCN, it literally opens up a pot of millions of federal dollars for people to submit proposals. And so you'll see this bear education drive over the next few years blossom into a unified effort which hopefully will be born out of Tennessee. It actually was born out of Tennessee, and be something to be proud of when you see it in a couple of years being a nationwide effort.
Two questions. And you guys were talking about the bears stay until they're 2 years old and they can.
No, so we can take bears up to 2
Up to
years
2
of
years.
age, and that's all we take. After they get older than that, they're not sexually active yet, but we can't risk getting into that situation. Our facility is not large enough to handle that. But they stay for as short a time as possible. We just have to get them up to a weight that's satisfactory, and that weight is dependent on the time of the year and the natural food sources that are available for them when they go.
Then the other question I was gonna ask is, do you guys, when you release a bear, the bear's good and happy and he's okay and he's healthy, and you get ready to release the bear, do you guys coordinate as to where the bear's released? I
They
mean,
go,
Mhm.
the release is 100% scheduled and done by the agency that brought the bear to us. So those agencies, whether it's another state, the state of Tennessee, or the Park Service, they decide the dates with our advice and telling them how the bears are. And they decide the place. And
Right.
generally speaking, in my 3 years, they've gone back as close as reasonable to the place that they came from. If you don't do that, they have an incredible sense of place, and oftentimes they'll use the interstates and neighborhoods and whatever to go back.
Interesting.
Perfect explanation.
Thanks.
All right, moving on to our second topic. It was bears and birds, and the second topic I'm going to talk, well, I'm not going to talk much about. I'm going to introduce another speaker up here, but a little introduction. A couple of years ago, obviously there was a lot of concern regarding quail management in Tennessee, and I'll tell you right here, right now, that we've always took it very seriously how we do quail management in Tennessee, and unfortunately, there's been individuals who have retired from our agency completely frustrated that they weren't able to make a tremendous difference in quail management. And it took a while for us to grasp the idea, and we still have to grasp that idea, that we cannot restore quail all over the state of Tennessee. They are so specific in the type of habitat that they need, this early successional habitat, that you just can't do it. It's a cultural change that has occurred over the last 50 years that has eliminated most of the quail habitat. And so over the last couple of years, we finally adopted our quail management plan. And what that does, it creates these focus areas. And we have a focus area in each of our 4 regions. And we're going to exert all of our efforts there. And that's literally going to be the paradise for quail in those individual regions because, again, we just don't have the money or the manpower to do these exhaustive efforts statewide. And so we've been working really hard. We've had tremendous success getting this whole program geared up. The quail, the managers of the WMAs that have been selected for these focus area meetings are getting fired up. And one of the first things that we did, and we started about 6 months ago, we began taking all of the WMA managers to show them what they need to do on their WMAs. And we had a jewel of a WMA right here in Tennessee. And I'm going to introduce Bill Smith, who is the manager of Kyker Bottoms WMA, just about 20 miles south of Maryville. And that place is absolutely unbelievable for quail management. Although it's designated as a wetland area and we manage for waterfowl, Bill primarily does a lot of the uplands management for quail, and he's done such an amazing job that he was just recently recognized nationally for his work in the quail world. And so I'm going to invite Bill Smith up here to talk a little bit about Kyker Bottoms, and then we'll make another announcement regarding Bill when he's done.
All right, hello. Well, my primary goal is that I still have the same profession that I do now at the end of my presentation. I hope I still have my job. This presentation was designed for my fellow workers, lands managers, now my boss's bosses, and the people that buy a hunting and fishing license and pay my salary are all staring at me now. So hopefully this goes well. We'll try to shorten it as much as possible. I'm not bad at quail management, but technology, I'm not the greatest. Let me see if I can find me on here. Yep. Oh, I can just hit the air. F5. That'll do it. Okay, gotcha. All right. Kyker Bottoms again is one of the 4 different areas I have. I started out as a law dogger, and my fellow law enforcement guys over there. And what I want to mention about management, if you don't have law enforcement and management and the biology together, then it won't work. And you can do all the biological management and make everything productive, and then you have people breaking the regulations and coming in, and then all your work is erased immediately. So I want to brag on those guys back there that the job I had and loved, and how important it is to management. I'm fortunate that one of my areas, the area that I work on, has a house on it. Now, it looked like where Uncle Fester lives, and that's what I tell people when they're describing it. It's built in 1847, and if they ever have another house hunt movie, you've seen that. I've got the location for it. But one of the I guess the grand things is my area does have a house, but you pay for that in a lot of other ways. The public, and if you don't like people, you better not be in this job. So, but I have people coming, at Christmas Eve, knocking on your door, go, "Hey, where's a good place to duck hunt?" Yeah. So, but one real quick story, and I'll try to make this really quick. But a fella came in. What they say, he ain't from here. He'd moved from here, from somewhere else. But he had this macaw, a parrot, and it's obviously dead. But he brought it to my house. Says, "You got to do something for it." And he's kind of nearly in tears. I'm going, "I'm a wildlife biologist. I'm not a veterinarian. That needs to go to the vet." He goes, "That's too far away. You've got to do something." I said, "The parrot's dead." He goes, "You've got to do something." So you saw my dog there. I said, "Let him look at it." So my dog kind of mouthed it a little bit. And I said, "The dog said he's dead." He's going, "No, you got to do more. You got to do more than that." So my wife has a cat, and the cat walked over it, looked, went all over it, and at last said, "Cat says it's dead." He goes, okay. He says, "Well, what I owe you?" I said, $500. He goes, "What?" I said, first you maybe do a lab test and a CAT scan. The parrot is dead. Okay. Here's an aerial view of Kyker Bottoms. And just what Darrell was describing, this is a wetland area. It's mainly purchased for waterfowl, and that's what about 150 acres of it is. But you got all this upland area that was really unique. I grew up, in my generation, we quail hunted. We rabbit, quail hunted, squirrel hunted. There wasn't deer, there wasn't turkey. I grew up in Blount County. If there was a deer or bear, it was in the park. And the very few big game animals. So in those days, I could get off the school bus, grab my single shot topper, my beagle and bird dog, and you could walk on anybody's property as far as you wanted, and we flush 3 or 4 coveys in an afternoon. Well, those days quickly disappeared. Now rabbit, quail, real low, bears, we got lots of them, deer, we got, turkey. What a great, how wonderful all that's been. But in the meanwhile, this habitat specific animal has really gone downhill. If you look around, especially where we live, it's either trees, mature trees, or it's fescue fields and houses. That's the habitat that's primarily around me, and that's the destruction of quail. You can, everybody wants to blame it on something. It's the coyotes killed them, moon phases, werewolves, or whatever, but it's right there. It's the habitat it's the key. When they hired me as a greener bean, I was a law enforcement officer, wasn't a biologist. But I loved quail, knew quail. I wanted it. That's where my education was coming from, and I was bound and determined to use it. Then I became the super guy. Just a few years later, anyway, this is for our guys. Hopefully y'all know. That's what in the meetings they'll go, "Well, I'm the chief of this and this and this," and they come to me. I go, "Well, I'm Bill Smith, world's greatest wildlife manager of all time." I always use that one, but we've got jokes about that. Here's the wetland area, and we'll just talk about that real shortly because we're talking about quail primarily. But this is some of the wetland areas on there, and we got lots of ducks. For the mountains, I'm looking literally at the Smoky Mountains from from this area. So, yeah, Reelfoot, we're a joke. But in East Tennessee, and you see that many ducks, it's pretty good. So, lo and behold, it was really, I'd like to mention Billy Menzer, one of my professors, has been in 1,000 different things. He's the one that saw the potential of this place. He's driving through there and it's flooded, and he saw all this waterfowl and he saw the potential, and lo and behold, we end up with acquiring this property, and then they hired the world's greatest wildlife manager, and look what we got. So now we'll talk briefly about the uplands. Do you want quail? You can have quail. We can do it. And I'm so excited to see that, this big push for early successional habitat. Are we going to ever have quail like we did when I was a kid? Probably not, because the landscape just doesn't do it. But particularly on our TWRA-owned lands, we can definitely have some impact, and at least have a place for people to see quail, hunt quail, and this area is really small, but it has been really productive. Rabbits and quail are the primary focus, but of course, it's for all different game. And one thing that I learned when I was in school is they pretty much said quail is a grassland bird. That's not true, in my opinion. It's not a woodland bird, which we got a lot of, and it's not a true grassland bird. It's a mixture. It's in that grass shrub community, shrub scrub. So what I'm finding is it takes a lot more woody component and forbs than it just means just grasses have quail. What we did wrong, this is what I see all my neighbors doing. Peak nesting time, they're mowing it. And I don't know what is the human being, or what everybody wants uniformity. So people want a golf course with quail. It will not, it doesn't happen, it doesn't work. So mowing, I don't, my grandfather had a dairy farm, and he didn't have time to just recreational mow that people do now. People have land, they come off work, hey, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna bush hog. And so that's what they do. And they mow and mow and mow and mow, keep it all, they keep it, to them pretty, to me it's ugly, but this is what that we're fighting a lot of. Food plots, we in TWRA, we used to give you a little bag of seed and say you plant this and jing, you have quail. And food almost is never the limiting factor of quail, almost never. So if you just plant food and have no habitat for them to be in, it's not going to work. It takes cover, mainly cover. And usually if you have the right color, you're going to have the food in there anyway. Our food plots can be productive and can be useful, but it's not the only thing that we have to do. It's really the cover primarily. Here's some of the mistakes we've made. We think we need to plant plants like bicolor Lesbides or other plants that are from some other place where God put them somewhere else, and we decide, human beings, we need to put them over here, and they become a real problem. Some of them have good structure, and that's real important for quail. And some of them have food like bicolor, but they end up, and they're as an exotic species, they end up taking over the whole thing. At Kyker, we have all kinds of school groups come. We have all the university wildlife students. I have Haywood Tech, Maryville College, biology students, and lots of grade school kids. And it's pretty easy that they can see what habitat, what it really means, and then turn around and look and see a mowed, 5 acres, and see why quail won't live there and why they do live here. So it's kind of a neat place to be able to do that. So trying to, any of my experience is to get away from exotics. Most of the time, all the food, all the cover, and everything is in the soil. Some of those seeds will last 100+ years in the seed bank waiting for the right conditions. And the right conditions most of the time is fire. What we did right, disking quail are birds of disturbance. This is not a good actual picture, but it's the only one I had. But this building levees. But when you disturb that soil and all the plants that come back after that, that's what produces quail habitat. Spraying sometimes fire and disking doesn't do the job, especially with exotics. The only answer is herbicides. With today's herbicides, is safe. You know, we don't use pesticides, insecticides, but we do use herbicides to get rid of exotics, and that's sometimes it's the only way that you can accomplish that goal. Native grasses has been the biggest push here in the last little while. Native grasses can be good, but they're just like food plots. They're not the only answer. And what we're finding now is, especially these grasses that are too thick, that they're not productive for quail. It's that in-between stage. So now, here we are telling people that you got to go back and thin these grasses, and that's what I'm doing. As a lands manager, you think, wow, I finally got these grasses established. It took me 3 to 5 years, and then I go and tell the landowner myself, now you got to disc this under and thin that way down. You're going, man, it took me 5 years to get this right. But just total grasses is not what quail are using. We'll go in and take a field that might have 40 plus species of plants in there, and we eradicate all that and plant 3 back. Something's not right there in the balance. So grasses are needed, but they're not the only thing that's needed. And if they're too thick, you have to manage them. Fire, I'm fighting Smokey Bear. Oh man, Smokey the Bear. I usually say this. It's not Easter the Bunny. It's Smokey Bear. Okay, I got it. So, but fire is, of course, everybody knows who Smokey Bear is, and everybody knows that fire is awful for wildlife. Well, that's what we're fighting today. Uncontrolled fire can be terrible. Of course, I don't want somebody's house to burn or their property to burn. But particularly for quail, that's why they call it the firebird. I get it. It's almost a necessity. And that fire goes through. All these, again, some of these seeds are dormant. They're waiting for the right conditions, and the right conditions a lot of times is fire, and it releases those seeds and they grow. And that's what very, 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 everybody thinks, if you've seen Bambi or any of those things, that fire's going to just burn all the animals up. I've seen 1 or 2 shrews with some burnt eyelashes, but everybody gets out. I've not one time. I have seen one picture of a guy had, a burnt turtle. I bet he was trying to get out of there, but the rabbits and most of the others, they're good. These guys are, if you go to Pigeon Forge, they're the chop, the whatever that feud and whatever is the chop show. Anyway, they came out and did some volunteer work. If there's anything that people hear me whine about is we want to do more. We want to do more, and it takes people. And so it's great to get volunteers, and I think you connect with people if they feel more involved if they're there. You got Mike there with Quail Forever. We got all these different groups that are coming in, and that's a connection. They feel part of it. They're working. They're sweating on it, and that's what I got to have. I have one technician, 4 areas, 17,000 acres, just me and one guy. See if y'all help me out. But so I depend on other people, and I think it's a good thing. Sometimes volunteers cost me time, but still, the connection with people and they're being a part of it, that's what you got to have.